For the two of us, we want to welcome you to a budget presentation that the citywide PTO decided to sponsor. We did this last year and we had a good response with it, so we felt it was important to continue doing this on an annual basis. What we really wanted to do tonight is Dr. Sal is going to do a presentation of what the budget proposal is he's putting through to the Board of Ed. There'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. What we ask is for you to keep your questions simple, to the point. This is not an opportunity to go on the attack on anything or to complain about any individual issues you may. Focus on what the budget is, what they're proposing, and where it's going, and then to understand what the process is, which you will get as the meeting goes on, and to learn the process. And if you have any questions on how the budget process works, at the end, please ask that, because we feel that an informed parent is what we need you to be, to inform, so you can become advocates for your own children. And that's what we want you to be able to do, and have the information to do that. Okay. So with that, Dr.
Irving,
Chairman. You want to speak? Irving Fox, who is the chairman of the Board of Ed, would like to say a few words. We'll pass it on to him.
that mic is on right there.
Thank you. Right. Thanks everyone for coming out this evening. My name is Irving Fox. I'm the chairman of the Danbury Board of Education. I wanted to thank all of you for coming here this evening. Tonight is kind of an important night in the process as we go through the budget cycle for the next school year. Up to this point, I'll give you a little refresher of where we sit in the budget cycle. And then once I'm finished, Dr. Sal will present the budget that he's presented to us at our last board meeting. And then we'll open it up to questions. But at this point in the cycle, the Board of Education is currently sitting with a budget that the superintendent proposed at our last board meeting. The budget has an increase of just north of $4 million over last year. But essentially the budget is one that just retains the existing programs that we have going forward this year. And one of the, when you look at the budget, we're operating in a very difficult financial environment, so you might say, well, a $4 million increase sounds very significant. And so how can you put forward a budget like this? And then that's something the board's going to have to consider. But think about, as we go through the presentation, a lot of the line items that we have, some of them are out of our control, like health insurance, utilities, gasoline, etc. So whether or not there are salary increases associated with our roughly 1,000-person staff, we might have to increase the budget several points just to keep the same services that we offer afloat, which is very difficult these days. And if you notice or have been following the last several years, we're now at a point where over the past 2, 3, maybe 4 years, the board's cut well over $10 million worth of services, increased class sizes, reduced supplies, reduced library books, etc. And so now we're at the point where if you don't put forward, and I won't call it a status quo budget, but if you don't put forward a budget that at least retains the existing programs, we're going to be kind of beneath or underwater. And the Board of Education, acting as an agent of the state of Connecticut, the state, as you know, has many requirements of the district, especially since we're in need of improvement. It may not be responsible for us, even in as challenging a financial time as it is, to cut out more programs and services over and above what we've already done. So that's going to be a very serious debate that the board's going to have over the next week or so. Now, the next stage in the process, now that the budget's been presented, is that the board is scheduled to hold a special meeting on Wednesday evening to vote on the budget and send it to the mayor's office to go forward. Now, with the weather forecast as it is, whether the meeting occurs on Wednesday or is pushed back, we don't know. But we need to be prepared in case we're there to vote on it. So the budget is being presented for public consumption, and within the next day or so, it'll be posted on the district's webpage. So we'll talk about that as well. But really, it's designed to just have everyone take a look at it before the board actually votes on it. Following this stage in the process, whether the board votes on it Wednesday at our next regular board meeting, the budget is then handed over to the mayor. And what the mayor has to do by city charter is take that budget that the board's passed and combine it with the requests from all of the other city's departments, fire, police, public works, etc., and look at the revenues that the city's looking to take in over the next year based on property taxes, etc., to see what exactly the city can afford to spend both for education and for all of the other city departments. So usually in the March or the April time frame, the mayor presents his consolidated city budget, which includes the education at a total level, to the Danbury City Council for their review and approval. Generally, in the last few years, that debate on the city council level has occurred in the month of April. So we'll be called back to meet with several city council members. They'll establish a committee to review what the board's passed and what the mayor's proposed going forward. And it's at that point we're going to have to reconcile if there are any differences between what the board is going to pass and what the mayor actually proposes. There'll be an impact statement as to what, up or down, or more likely down than up, what actions will be necessary to meet the mayor's proposal. And then once the city council approves the budget in its total number, and that usually occurs in the beginning of May, it comes back to the Board of Education to do a line item reduction or addition based on what the city council has adjusted. So these discussions are going to take place over the next 2 or 3 months, but now is a very critical point in the process because the budget that's going to go to the city is what the board feels is in the best interest of the school district and its 10,000 students. And so that's why I'm glad that you're all here this evening to hear that. So that's kind of where we are in the process, and again, I'll be available for questions once we're all finished. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Pasquarella, who will take us through a summary of the budget that's been proposed to the Board of Education as it sits today. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Dr. South.
Thank you. Mr. John, you want to say something about the Adopt a School program that you started before I get into it, or I knew you had mentioned that? Janelle is also a board member on the finance group.
It's easy to pass the buck. My name is Dave Gianelli. I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Education, also co-chair of the Finance Committee. As already said, the budget that was presented to us, or to my committee this year, is one, whether you call it status quo or moving us ahead, is essentially a budget that has only the cost elements that are in here that we have no control over. You'll see in the budget, it has costs for the health insurance, which is significant, utilities, and probably the first time since I've been on the board, there's essentially no cost in here for the labor increases, with the exception of a nominal amount from a prior year's contract. We've worked very hard this year to maintain these costs, understanding the economic conditions. We've negotiated with the unions that there would be zero increases, either through negotiations or through arbitrations. That's come to fruition. And so it's a very, very difficult time. As Kurt explained, I'm not going to repeat, it's a very difficult budget, which basically just moves us ahead. It's very important that you understand the process, and also the information that's going to be given to you tonight helps you make decisions. It helps you advocate for your child, to have the people, your state, your city people support education. It lets you know where the costs are, basically what we're up against. Things are difficult. You've heard that phrase over and over. I don't really think they're going to get better next year and the year after. So we do have certain problems. One of the things that we have done was some creative thinking. There's something called Adopt a School that last summer we worked on, thanks to Dr. Glass in his former life in Bridgeport. They had a very successful program, Adopt a School, about 15, 20 years ago. Essentially, if you think of the phrase that it takes a village to raise a child, this is pretty much what it is. We've got all the stakeholders in the community to sort of work with us in the district to take an interest in the education process in Danbury. What I mean by stakeholders are parents, religious leaders, the students, as well as the community. Danbury is very fortunate to have a lot of good businesses, a lot of talented individuals in the community. We're reaching out to each of these segments to have them play their role in supporting our educational process. With regard to the business community, we are looking for them to join us and understand what we are doing in education. Our students are their future employees. We're looking perhaps some help for them, for financial help, to give us money. It's really pathetic that we are in an age of technology. Technology budget is the bits. We can't afford to buy any new equipment, and if new equipment was given to us, we have difficulty trying to just maintain it because we don't have staff. So again, reaching out to these companies to ask for financial help, to ask for in-kind services is something that we're looking to do. As well as parents, is to take an interest in working with their child to help their teachers. In the elementary level, they can certainly read with the students for content, not just read to them. They could participate in the PTOs. PTOs work with the principals, and the information can get up to the superintendent as well as the PTOs for the citywide PTO. So we have done everything to consolidate and to move ahead and to try to think so-called outside of the box. I think you'll appreciate the budget presentation, and you'll understand the difficult times that we have and some of the choices that we may have to make. It'll also show you where we
Put too
were.
many fears in everybody, and we have people leaving, and, you know, it just, I was leaving, everybody was leaving, everybody was going away. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to talk to you about what the budget means. And for us, we were fortunate this year that going forward, the teachers are receiving zero. In fact, everybody's getting a zero next year. That's not unusual. All of you in the industry know. So that is there. There's going to be a small catch-up amount, which is a phased-in salary for some individuals, but ostensibly everybody is zero. So that's not really our cost driver this year. And we'll talk about what's costing us money to move ahead. What we were looking at, and I'm sorry about this, we have substitute custodians here tonight, and we can't turn that down, but we have to, as a board, maintain the core levels of education programming. And that means something to us, to this community. It may be different than other communities, but we'll talk about what it means to us. We have to meet our legal and contractual requirements. For example, class sizes, we have goals, we have activities with unions in terms of what those sizes may be. And just to note, I think those sizes are good and healthy, and we're exceeding those sizes, and it's not a good thing. We really would like to keep our class sizes lower, particularly at the elementary school. We have a number of positions that are opening. We're doing what business is doing. We may not replace them all. There's a position for technology we will not replace. There's another assistant superintendent who left and retired we will not replace. We have two other positions that we just will not replace. We'll create some other kind of structure to do their work, at least temporarily. And we're talking about no new programs. It's hard to start a new program when you don't have the resources. At the state legislative level, with the new governor, there's a number of proposals that say they want to repeal a lot of unfunded mandates, asking schools to do something and providing no funds, and that happens quite a bit. You want to go to the next? We're going to put a moratorium on technology. And how many PTO folks have I got here? Let me thank you for all and parents for giving the schools the technology. But what's happening to us is we're at a tipping point. We don't have enough staff members, technology people, to take any more equipment, even if it's free. Because when it comes into us, somebody has to maintain it. And if we can't maintain them and teachers can't rely on them, there's any sense putting them in. So we've asked folks not to add any equipment. And it's hard to tell, PTO, well, you know what, we don't want any more computers, and we don't want any, it's not we don't want to, we can't support them. So one of the adopted school things that Dick Janelle was talking to you about, there may be on a list that we have that the principals provided, if there's someone out there that wants to sponsor a technology person, we'll have their person hand it to the staff, then we can accept some more equipment. Otherwise, we're saying, no mas, we can't do it anymore. We have graduation requirements that the Board of Education is doing earlier. Right now, if the university system developed a graduation requirement that exceeds our minimum requirements. Now, many of our students that go through our high school exceed those requirements. But there's a cadre of youngsters that they can go through the entire school to meet our graduation requirements and not get into a university here in Connecticut. We don't think that's right. So the board, the state approved the graduation requirement, which is supposed to go in 2 years, and for the class of 2019. Our Board of Ed redid ours to begin next year. However, it may cost us, and today, talking to the chairman, it could be 5 or 6 positions over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. So we may delay that. The board still needs to discuss that. Right now, we're anticipating starting on graduation requirements for next year. It will begin with the current 8th grade going in. We reallocate existing staff. We just had to, our technology system that's breaking down, we've had custodians retire. We didn't replace the custodians. We put part-time people in. We took their salaries and we just added a technology person. So we're trying to figure out how to do what we do differently and at least support what the teachers need in the classroom and not add to our budget. And we have to continually pursue cost-containing savings measures. I mean, it's what we all do at home. Everything is out to bid. We're working with the city, looking how we can do things together. We're trying to really squeeze a lot out of the single dollar that we get from the taxpayers. This is something that Dr. Glass put together, and I'll have him explain that, but it basically takes us through how we want to look at the programs that we have. Bill?
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you tonight. We really appreciate it when parents, and especially PTO folks in particular, come out and participate in these kind of ongoing dialogues. Because we appreciate you being here so much tonight, we made an arrangement with the city. We took your addresses as you were coming in. Your streets will be plowed first tomorrow. So things are all set. Actually, this is a little bit hard to see, but it's a very important slide. Many, many people came together to work on this. So we want to spend a minute walking you through this. If you look at the top left part of the slide, you'll see a dartboard. And if you notice, there are 5 concentric circles. That represents last year and the allocation that we received. We fully recognize these are the worst economic times that any of us have ever seen. So we get the fact that these are tough times and we have to all hunker down. But what we want to explain to you or share with you tonight is that we've already cut into our core work. As many of you know, we no longer have kindergarten aides. Today I was in a classroom at one of our schools. There were 22 youngsters in that kindergarten classroom with 1 teacher. And 2 of the kids had issues that they had to deal with. So I popped over and took care of 1 youngster. The teacher was dealing with the 20 youngsters remaining other than the other youngster, and then we kind of shifted back and forth between the 20 kids so she could take care of the other student that had a problem. We cut into the A's. We eliminated middle school family and consumer science. Our gifted program has been dramatically restructured. There are many other cuts that we've already felt. We've cut back dramatically in our professional development programs, in our instructional materials, and our textbooks, and on and on and on. So what we're talking about now is not making cuts to the core program. Those have already been done. We're talking about a different kind of reality in Danbury, the likes of which we probably have never seen. So let me explain what our thinking is. If you look at the 3, they're supposed to be concentric circles. The red circle in the middle, the yellow second circle out, and then the orangish colored 3rd circle. This has been the conceptual framework that we have used in preparing the budget and moving it forward. As you heard Sal say, as you heard Dick say, as Elliot will say shortly, as Irving said, as I'm saying, we're all really trying to be very good stewards, fiscal stewards of taxpayers' dollars. We recognize nobody's in a position to have their taxes raised. That goes for all of us as well. We've all taken 0 increases. We've really tried to do the right thing. Even with that, we still have to have a strategy to move forward just to maintain the current status quo. If you look at the red circle, that for us, and I say us, I mean the Board of Education has heard this, we're all in agreement. We've shared this with common council members. Mission critical items, the critical programs at the most basic level of the board's mission. What does that mean? If you go back 100 years ago, you've heard about the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. We're talking about the basic skills areas of literacy and numeracy, translation, reading, writing, and math. Our argument here is, at all costs, maintain those programs. If you don't have reading, you don't have writing, you don't have math, you don't have a school district, you don't have school for kids. You have everything but the core mission of the reason that Board of Ed comes together with the community to educate its children. So for us, that's the most mission critical aspect of the work we have to maintain. And you'll see that we've already cut into that dramatically over the past year or 2. The yellow circle, top priority items, these are items that are required required by law. There's a state statute 1016B that says, quote, you must have planned, ongoing, and systematic programs of instruction in the 11 mandated content areas. If you choose not to do that, you choose to be out of compliance with state law. It's not a good thing to do. We have special education laws that we have to follow. We don't want to be out of compliance with those and a number of other legal mandates. As Sal said before, there are a number of unfunded or underfunded mandates now, and people are recognizing that there's no way that we can maintain these programs, or in some cases even initiate them. Thanks, Sal. That's it. We've cut back on batteries as well. So the bottom line is all those yellow tier items are items that are required by law. The only one that's negotiable right now is the graduation requirement piece. And we've been in close contact with Interim Commissioner Coleman, working to see if we can postpone these. They're good things to have for kids. It's just very difficult in tough economic conditions to move things forward if you don't have the resources to support them. And the last concentric circle are the very important items. We'll go through that in a minute. What you won't see are important items and things that are just good to have. Those were cut away last year. So we're talking now about very important programs. Those are all the other remaining programs for students, for parents, for staff, and items related to the operation and maintenance of the school system. If you look to the right, address student support, supplemental and extracurricular programs, operations, supplies, materials, equipment, adult development, outreach, etc. As Sal said, we don't want to scare people. We have a very good working relationship with the mayor and with the city council. We're working very closely with them on a number of parallel initiatives. I'll give you examples of that later on. So it's not us against them. We're all in this together. Same thing as parents working with us working with the parents. And however, here is, if cuts do have to be made, that top right box, address student support, supplemental, extracurricular, etc., those are the areas where the cuts will be made. That translates into support services for kids. It translates into co-curricular, extracurricular activities, aka sports, athletics, the play, the band, things like that. Things that are not required by law and things that don't make a school system a school system. Are they good things to have? They're critically important things to have. But if you don't have the money to run it, then you have to do what you have to do. So that becomes our operating conceptual framework as we work as a unified team to try and make the best of really tough times.
Good evening. My name is Elio Luongo. I'm the district's finance director. First, thank you for joining us this evening. It's great to see familiar faces and new faces as well. Understanding the major cost drivers for the upcoming fiscal year 2011-2012. For fiscal year 2009-2010, the Board of Education's total appropriation was just shy of $112 million. In the rightmost column, see we have tagged a 0% increase. The 0% locked fiscal year 9-10 to prior year 2008-2009 levels. The current fiscal year, 2010-2011, our appropriation is at $114 million. We received approximately $2 million additional award from the City Council for the current year. $2 million on top of the base of 112 represents a 1.79% increase. The identified and known cost drivers that will impact next fiscal year. Health insurance. Health insurance for approximately 1,000 employees will amount to just shy of $3 million of cost increase. It's $2.950 million. Now, $2.9 million, the makeup is a 12% quoted increase to our policy premium. We also have ERA funds, which are the federal state stabilization funds and IDA funds, which assisted state government and local municipalities for the past 2 years. These are federal stimulus dollars. As they expire, the shift of burden now is placed on the Board of Education and the local taxpayer. And in addition, we have what are known as FTEs, or full-time equivalent positions, which we'll speak to shortly. In total, just shy of $3 million. Now, $3 million on a base budget this year of 114 calls for a 2.6% increase. So healthcare alone, at 2.6% increase, exceeds last year's appropriation of 1.79%. ERA, American Reinvestment Organization Act, specific to IDIA loss and salaries alone, shift the burden to the Board of Education and loss taxpayers amounts to $692,000, or approximately 0.6 of a percentile point. Staffing. In order to maintain current levels of teacher-to-student ratios, we feel there will be a need to add 8 teaching positions to the next school year fiscal budget, and to support improvements in our technology area, the addition of 1 tech person. 9 total positions, salary at an average of approximately $50,000 per position, $450,000, 0.4 of a percentile point. Utilities. We continue to partner with the City of Danbury on the purchase of utilities in the form of electricity, natural gas, gasoline, and fuel oil. We're fortunate to have locked in on a couple of the utility types of fuels for multiple years. One we've locked in until fiscal year 2014-15. Others we continue to monitor on a weekly basis improvements to utility costs, and we will monitor them with the city and lock in the near future. Utilities will call for approximately $323,000 cost increase. Teachers and administrators represent the largest part of our labor force. Through arbitrated awards, the Board of Education has secured 0% increases for next year. 0% in terms of the GWI, which is general wage increase, and no step increase to contracts. Last fiscal year, or excuse me, for this current fiscal year, both the teachers and administrators offered concessions to the Board of Education. They were scheduled, the teachers, to receive a 3% increase. The concession, which was granted or given to the Board of Education and to the City of Danbury, so the teachers would receive their 3% increase split over 6-month intervals. In other words, 1.5% on the first day of the fiscal year on July 1, the other 1.5% effective approximately on January 1. The effective rate over the course of the year amounts to 2.25%. So we saved approximately 0.75% off the fiscal constraints for the current fiscal year as a result of the direct concessions. However, as we prepare to enter next fiscal year, that 0.75 point serves as a deferral. And that deferral amount, although the teachers and administrators will be frozen at the current year levels, there will be a catch-up provision which amounts to approximately $427,000, or 0.4 of a percentile point. Transportation, next year we enter year 4, a 5-year contract. When we entered with the current vendor for bus transportation of our students, we saved the city approximately $2.5 million through competitive bidding over the course of 5 years. The contractual increase for next school year is approximately $247,000. ERA Jobs Fund credit. Washington announced Jobs Funds credit for the current fiscal year and next fiscal year. As stewards of the financials for the City of Danbury, good stewards of the financial City of Danbury, we've saved approximately $336,000 of our total allocation for next year's budget to serve as a credit to offset some of the known cost increases. And all amounts of all other object codes, total budget presents approximately 100 line items. We only have about 7 or 8 listed. So all remaining line items were held constant. Again, it's to take the current year levels of programs and services and simply just to roll them forward. All said and done, a static operating budget calls for an increase of $4.7 million. $4.7 million represents a 4.16% increase over the current year levels.
The next phase, can you hear this? Not working?
Yes. You know, how we're controlling costs to school. We have about $4.8 million increase, correct? Right. That's it. Okay. Would you go back to this slide? I mean, these numbers drive me crazy. What Elio said was simply, our budget in 09 and 10 is the same in 08. So we keep paring down, and most of it was in the classroom. But if you look at the health insurance, there's a co-premium share that the teachers pay. I mean, it's not 100% paid by the board, just so we all understand that. And that has gone up a little bit to help defray the cost. So we don't pay it all, but it aggressively moves up. We have been working with the city to move that down. This is still a work in progress. We're hoping to keep refining this. The ERA money, where it says salary losses, we got money, you know, it's time to pay the piper. We got the money 3 years ago. We knew if we didn't use it, then we were going to have to increase class sizes. And we're a district that needs to close the achievement gap. Not a good idea to do that and increase class sizes if we didn't have to. So our hope was 3 years ago, we knew that it would come to an end. They did add something to it, the new jobs fund, but not as much. So that amount of money up there on ERA, it's going away. It helps supplement programs. It's not like we can say, okay, now we don't have the money, you go away. That's not the choice. We've got to keep those programs and keep the programs supporting the teachers. Most of all of that money went to nothing more than salaries and teachers and direct services to kids. The staffing 8.0, that's class size, and because of our enrollment. The city of Danbury is going up, Fairfield County is going down. Our increases this year, we're at 10,300 students. We were supposed to be under that. So Danbury is growing. You have a growing number of young students, and we have class sizes going up and a decreasing budget. You know, that tipping point's coming to pay the piper here. So we need to keep that. The tech person at 1.0, I said to you before, we reduced the salary for a custodian, and that's how we're paying for that. But overall, we do have to increase next year. We think, by the way, the state legislature is looking at a new law for kindergarten. It was going to be phased in, but we're not sure. Right now, a student, I think, can enter, let's say January 1st, it's the end of December, when you turn 5. Now it may be September 1. If that's the case, we may have less kindergartens this year, more next year. We don't know yet because it's in the state legislature. So depending on how those kids come in, we're looking at maybe 2 classes, 2 teachers at the elementary. Maybe we know we need help at the middle school with 2 or 3 teachers, and then the high school, with enrollment, we're going to have to need some teaching. So we've been putting about 8 teachers a year in, and that's been about the same thing for about 5 years. Utilities. You've been listening to the report the last 6 days? In Egypt? Something happens with that. Guess what? That's going to go crazy on us. It's not like this stuff is sacrosanct. I mean, that's going to impact us big time. But right now, that's what we have in there. Teachers and administrators, we explain now. Transportation. The kids are probably having transportation, and you're going to hear this from me. I'm meeting with all of the parochial and the private schools. We have to bus all of our non-public school students by law, which is fine. They pay taxes in town, and we do that. But one of the problems that we're having, we have roughly 92 buses. We have 100 of them sitting on the lot so that, we have 8 in case they break down. Even though they're new buses, they break down, or if we need other transportation going on. Our enrollment is going up. We put magnet schools in. They can't make the runs in the 20 minutes between the schools safely. So many of the schools, they get there late. Many of the kids get home late. So the bus company said, look, if you really want to do this right, you can do 1 of 2 things. You can add 3 or 4 buses, and every bus we add is about $65,000. We don't have that kind of money to do that. Or you look at switching the times. So that's what we're going to have to do. So I know that's going to upset parents, but if I have to choose between putting teachers in the classroom and adding 10 minutes, we're going to look at the 10 minutes. If that's going to make it safer for kids and also capable of saving some money. I don't know if we're going to do that yet. We're still looking at that. We're trying to find ways how to balance this budget and support your kids in the classrooms as best we can. All other code out. I mean, there's not much money there. There's not a lot of discretionary money in our budget anymore. 82% of our budget is salary and benefits, and then 18% is supposed to be discretionary. When you get right down to it, it's really about 2% that we may, and even that 2%, we need textbooks, workbooks, we need that stuff. Thank your teachers if you have, because a lot of them have been going out and buying stuff on their own. They really have. They've been really troopers about doing that, and I commend them for doing that. It's really been a problem for us. Okay, you want to turn that? So we've been doing a number of things to save the money, and we're still, by the time we go to the city council, we're hoping it's really refined where it's lower than that. But we don't want the budget to move us back. We want one that's going to at least keep the status quo. But, we need a budget that's going to be fiscally responsible, education responsible, and sensitive. The mayor brought us in. He's been fair with us. He's told us what we can and cannot do. When we all went in to see him probably about 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago, he said everybody's challenged in the city. Tax collections are down, people are unemployed, there's a lot of foreclosures. So his message to us that, you may not get what you got last year or maybe less, and that was every department. So we're all working, trying to get to the same common good. So it's not pitted against the municipality. We're really trying to do what's best for the community of Danbury. But I have to advocate for the kids. I mean, that's what my job is. The general revenue fund, go ahead. You want to talk about how we get our money?
Yes, to appreciate the size and magnitude of a local school district's budget, the current year appropriation of $114 million, approximately $91 million is funded through the local taxpayer. In addition, the city of Danbury receives approximately $20 million of state reimbursements known as the education cost sharing, with the remaining $3 million, or just under 3%, of federal subsidies, the era state fiscal stabilization funds. So as we go forward, any marginal dollar, any additional dollar added to the education budget, 90 cents on a dollar comes from the local taxpayer. It only amounts to approximately 7% or so through 70% through the reimbursements, and 3 cents on a dollar from federal subsidies. And the federal subsidies, some will expire at the end of this fiscal year, come June 30th, 2011. And the only era funds available for next fiscal year is years 2 of the JOBS funds.
Thanks.
In terms of percentages, City of Danbury's 90 million out of the 114, it's 80 cents on a dollar. The 80 cents, 17 cents from the state reimbursement, and 3 cents on a dollar basis, so federal subsidies. Cost composition. What exactly is it that we spend our money on? $114 million. The bottommost colored section of the bar chart, the goldenrod section. Slightly over 60%, or 62 cents on a dollar, is tied to salaries. We are a labor service, and we employ over 1,000 employees. In addition to the salaries, we have benefits, and the benefits represent approximately 19 to 20% of the education funds. Combined, I've said this earlier, it's approximately 80 to 82 cents on a dollar. Above the 82 or 82nd percentile, we have, in lack of a better term, discretionary funds. So the discretionary funds must address all of our legal obligations in terms of lease obligation, contractual obligations, busing, and the like. When you get to the very top of the stacked bar chart, you see the very, very narrow bands. The very narrow bands represents what's left for the critical types of supplies. Textbooks, office supplies, classroom supplies, which amounts to not more than perhaps maybe 4 cents on a dollar. We've been asked to go back and study levels of proficiency and to compare Danbury results to the state of Connecticut average, and as well as to our partnering districts, what is known as DIRG-H, which is District Reference Group. These are municipalities, Board of Educations of similar size, socio-demographics, and the like. In fiscal year 2006-2007, the Danbury cost to educate a student came in at $10,700. The state average was $11,558, while our partners within the DIRG-H category spent $11,888. In mid-year 7-8, Danbury's cost per pupil, $11,200, compared to the state average of $12,200, and a DIRG category of $12,300. And in fiscal year 8-9, Danbury taxpayers funded $11,700 per pupil. The state average was $12,800, and the DIRG-H category was approximately $13,100. So across the 3 identified years, Danbury has always maintained a per pupil expenditure below the state average and below the DIRG-H partnering districts. In percentage terms, we can compare Danbury and Durham H districts to the state average by locking or fixing the state to 100%. The state represents the full dollar bill. Danbury in 06-07 matched the state's dollar expense with approximately 93 cents on a dollar. We delivered services to our children at a cost of 93 cents versus a state average of a dollar. While our partnering towns within the Durham H category overspent the state average by 3 cents. They were pegged at 103% of the state average. In year 7-8, state once again fixed at 100%. How did the Dirks compare? They overspent the state average by 1%. Danbury remained efficient. We expected to spend 92 cents in comparison. And in fiscal year 08-09, 91 cents on a dollar compared to the state's dollar for dollar. And for the third year in a row, the DIRG exceeded the state average by 2 percentile points. Also, for a 3-year trend, Danbury moved from 93 down to 92, down to 91% when compared to the state average.
The next part is the full-time equivalency. That's how we determine our staffing. This is the 82% that we're talking about. Okay, when we, when you look at the efficiency about us going down, I don't know how proud I am of that. I mean, I think we're spending money wisely. It's not so much that it's just down. There's an early retirement in there. We reorganize our administrators. I think if I was leaner and better, but we're leaner and better in terms of the things that we're doing. We're working differently. I think we understood that back there when we had a Cambridge study come in and say, look, things have got to change, and we did. So we took advantage of a lot of things to make that happen. I don't know if those numbers would be that way, but we are working, mindfully and carefully on how we spend the money and how we supervise the things that we do. And we can get better at it. There's no question. We can always get better at it. But at what cost here? If you look at the trend here for 3 years, we did retire 72 people 2 years ago. And we do what we call cost avoidance. This year, it's going to cost us $1 million to pay off the early retirement. We had 5 years of that. But we've saved a lot more money by having, teachers at a lower salary. We have a whole different kind of staffing level. So we've been able to cost avoidance by doing that. So that's part of it. But we wound up hiring some teachers back. But we've lost totally over the past 3 years. Teachers, we lost 4%. Cumulative over the 2 years was almost 35 teachers. Those people that support a lot of the work that we do in the classroom, the aides and what have you, we've lost almost 18. We've lost 14%, 15% of our administrators, almost 6.5%. The cabinet member the cabinet is now part of the general administration. We moved a assistant superintendent. We will not be rehiring that person. We've refined everybody's got too many administrators and secretaries. Well, we reduced secretaries as well. We reduced custodians. What really breaks my heart? I was reading what they were doing in Hartford. Parents were upset that the school wasn't clean. And they came out and said, it almost shocked me. On Mondays, we cleaned the evening classroom, and on Tuesday, we cleaned the other ones. I'm thinking, we can't go there. That's not what we can do. There are really unusual things that are going on, and we're not there yet, and I hope not to be there. But we've reduced our custodians to the point where I don't know how to reduce it anymore. And how do you run a school without a nurse? You tell me. With all of the needs our kids have. It's scary for us, for me, because I'm in charge of those youngsters. And yet, as Bill talked about, what's essential? What do we provide? What if something happens where we don't have enough money? How do you do that? How do you tell a parent you don't have a nurse there? The nurse is next door because they're sharing. It's kind of tough. But, that's what we're faced with. And it's a scary thing for us to look at. We tried to look at the administrative one because the board has asked, and in terms of what we're doing. We had the enrollment in 07, we had 52 administrators for 9,800 students. In 2010, we had 38 administrators for 10,300 students, almost 10,300 foreign students. So I think we've been carefully reducing there as well. What's the next one say? The specialists in the classroom. This is the students. That represents the elementary schools, almost 5,000 students. We had 38 specialists. We had to reduce half of our reading staff. Now, if you haven't been in the school lately, you should go into a school. When Bill says he was in that kindergarten with 22 students, 8 or 9 years ago, you didn't see the needy students that we have in our classrooms that we have now. They're there, and they add to the mosaic of our schools. These add to what we do, but they're needy. Right now, our student population has gone from 34% free and reduced lunch to 46% free and reduced lunch. Now, that just brings greater needs for us, greater needs for teachers and students. They talk about leveling the playing field. There are kids that come in, they don't know their surnames, and they not only recognize letters, they're very needy. And now we have larger class sizes, and that really has been impacting us. And when we have 2 reading consultants in there, they can give more service to those youngsters to level the playing field. We had to reduce those individuals because the state took away our grant. So we lost half of our support, and then we lost half of our math specialists, because there's a half-time math teacher in every school. They're not extra, they're essential to what we do because of the need that we have. So we had almost 20 specialists for 5,200 students. So you can see how the need is going up and the numbers are going down. What's the next one?
Go back and punctuate one thing based on what Elio said and then Sal. We've heard for years now, 3 or 4 years, that if at all, no matter what you have to do, maintain teachers in the classroom. Keep the class sizes small, make sure you have teachers in front of kids. When you look at these numbers, those percentages that Sal went over, if you look at 20% on the right side, that's the capital, that's the highest ranking administrative group that there is. It's a small team. This is the team that actually runs the school system. It's unheard of. We challenge you to go out and look at the DIRT H, District Reference Group H, and find a district that doesn't have less than 3 people with superintendent attached to their name. Whether it's assistant superintendent, associate superintendent, deputy superintendent, superintendent. To punctuate this, if you look at Brookfield, they have 3,000 students with 2 superintendent types. Danbury now has 10,000, almost 500 students with 2 superintendent types. If you look at Fairfield, if you look at Newtown, if you look at Bethel, if you look at all the districts around us, it's the same. If they're like a third of our size, it's the same senior level of administrators. When you look at the administrative pool being cut by 14%, the board told us, keep teachers in front of kids. And we adhere to that. But then when you go back to this slide, 17 of those folks are required by law because you have to have a principal in the building. You have to have a superintendent, for example. Think of what a school would be like with no principal. When you think of Rogers Park with 1,100 kids and Broadview with 1,100 kids and have 3 administrators, if one of those folks is at Beaverbrook, for example, at a meeting, it leaves 2 people to run 1,100 student population. What happens if one of those folks gets ill? And so you have 1 person for 1,100 kids. So we think a ratio of 3 to about 1,000 is appropriate. We frequently have people say, yeah, but you have 5 people at the high school. You have 6 people in the high school. You need all those principal types. Well, if you think of 3 for 1,000, 6 would be for 2,000, 9 would be for 3,000. We have 6 for 3,000, not 9 for 3,000. So we're running very, very lean on this. And the last piece is, if you look at what we had in terms of reading and math specialists, direct support, pulling kids out of class in small groups, you've seen them in the hallways with the little tables. If you volunteer in your classroom, you've seen them coming in. If you've had children who have had reading problems or math problems, and you've called me or others like us, like me, principals, whomever, crisscross, etc., we will send these people in to provide direct service to your kids. Look at the devastation that has taken place in just a few years to the positions at a teacher level but not in the classroom. So we just wanted to illustrate for you that we have really done our due diligence in terms of cutting. We've gone through multiple reorganizations. We've got to the point now where we're getting to the point where we just can't cut anyone else. However, if you go back to this slide, 2 or 3 of those solid colors at the bottom, they're up for grabs right now. It looks like we probably will not replace those positions either. So that slide will have even more cuts brought to it.
Go ahead.
Most of you, I think, have a pretty good handle on this. Let me do the top part of this. These are our class size targets. At the middle school level and the high school level, we work to have no more than 25 kids per class. The contract says a teacher can't have more than 125 kids totally throughout the course of the day. So you have 5 classes of 25 kids each, that gives you the 125. At kindergarten through first grade, we're now up to 22. A couple years ago, at kindergarten through grade 2, our staffing pattern was 20 kids per class. We changed that last year, so now grades 2 through 5 are up to 25. It used to be 3 through 5 was 25. So we increased the number of kids, which allowed us to decrease the number of teachers needed. We increased the number of kids at kindergarten and first grade, and we also cut the paraprofessional. So now, where we had 2 people for 20 kids, we have 1 person for 22. Sal mentioned this very briefly. We get our numbers off of a state report. If you look at the shift in our population trend, 2008 we had roughly 10,000 students, 2009 10,150, 2010 almost 10,400, and we're growing exponentially. Our projections, based upon a demographer, which is a person who specializes in determining what the enrollment trends will be like over time. If you're from Shelter Rock School, we're looking at a 56 to 57% increase in the student population in the relatively near future. So we're one of the few school systems around that's growing. This is just another slide that speaks to what we talked about before. And also, just quickly touching on this, as Sal mentioned, if you look at the trend line, 2007, 2009, we were around 30% or so at our poverty level. This is based on the number of kids who were entitled to free and reduced lunch. If you look what's happened in 2010, it's jumped dramatically to 46%. If you've heard us at board meetings or other places where we've spoken, you've heard us use this piece of research. Kids who come from less affluent backgrounds, kids who live out below the poverty level, typically on average come to kindergarten with about a 3,000 word vocabulary. Not that they're fluent in all 3,000 words, but they've heard 3,000 different words over time. Kids from moderate income families come with about 5,000 word vocabulary. And kids from affluent families come between 7,000, 10,000, as possibly as high as 15,000. So for conservative in our numbers, the first day of a child's kindergarten experience, that child living in poverty comes with 3,000 words. The child from average income families, 5,000 words, affluent families, 7,000. The first day, the first hour, the first minute of that child's experience, there could be a 4,000 word gap. And that's the achievement gap that Sal talked about earlier. We're trying to close that gap by accelerating learning, not by just giving you a year's worth of growth for a year's worth of instruction. Makes it very, very difficult. And lastly, we have almost a 40% mobility rate. What does that mean? If you start September 1 and you finish June 30th, 40% of the kids in a given school at the elementary level will be different kids. Some of our kids have moved as many as 4 or 5 times in 1 year within Danbury into different schools. So what we try to do with that is we've standardized the curriculum. If you move from school A to school B, it's the same curriculum. We've also standardized the pacing, which means if kids are reading a certain book at Great Plains School in September, and that youngster moves to King Street in November, they won't get that book again because they've already read it. And if they read a book at King Street in November, and they move in January at South Street, they'll have the same book that King Street would be reading at that point in time. So the pacing is the same to try and mitigate the negative impacts of mobility. Sal's going to finish up with critical points that we're working on.
I think we've been through enough. I think the last one there, we always strive, at least I have, and I know my principals, is to maintain a safe, orderly, and clean learning environment. And that means from what we do in the classroom, our treatments of youngsters, respecting each other, and a lot of things that go on around that we try to support by making sure that we have a wholesome atmosphere and climate in our schools. I'm willing to open up the Q&A right now. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much for being patient.
Irving also wants to just say something.
Pardon?
Irving?
Yeah, just one further. There's one more slide after that. Or after that. you're hearing all of this, a lot of it not good news, and you might be saying, well, what is it that I can do? You see a sparse crowd here. And a public school system is a system that's maintained by the community. These are the professionals that are guiding the system as it goes along. The function of the board is to sit as as the guardians of the system. And without public support, the school system will erode away year after year after year after year. So what can I do as a citizen? And one thing I would say that is most critical, apart from, and I'm not going to say advocate storming the Bastille, the mayor's office, city council, etc., because we do need to work with them very closely. And if you look a few slides back where it talked about poverty, the poverty rate increase, and generally when you see communities with that higher level of poverty, the Bridgeports, Hartfords are even higher than that, etc., the amount of state aid that flows into those towns dwarfs what comes in here by a landslide. And so the money comes in from different sources. As the poverty rate increases here and the state formula for aid doesn't change, our own taxpayers, just based on that poverty rate going up, can't afford to pay for the system. The tax revenue that the city's collecting simply isn't enough. You can't weight the remaining people with what it would take to increase. We were at a meeting a few weeks ago with the mayor, and the question was posed, well, what is the impact for every $1 million, say? And the average taxpayer is going to pay several $100s for every $1 million that we need in funding. And most people, myself included, probably can't afford a tax increase of several $100s or more on their property. And so what is it that what is it that can be done? The chief thing that people can do and to keep involved is to stay informed. So all of us here, there aren't that many of us, but we all know 20, 30, 50, 100 people. People need to know and understand what exactly is going on, what the steps are in the process, and what issues are on the table. Eventually, chances are more likely than not that we'll have to cut something. The exact number, we won't know that for another several months. But it's very important for people to keep informed and to understand what's important to them. Eventually, we're going to get a plan from the administration recommending something be done based on the final number that we're going to get. And it's our job to kind of weigh that and say, well, what is in the best interest of the community? Based on what the professionals say, but what the people say. And many of you who were here last year, the year before, whenever the list did come out, whoever was impacted by that cut, we got a storm of people coming to speak about that item. And then one item would be taken off, another item would be put on the list, and a whole other group of people would come down to the meeting. But guess what? The cuts that are going to have to be made going forward after the roughly 10 million or so, or 70 FTEs plus supplies, etc., you're not going to have a single person or group of people come into the room. We're going to have thousands. Because what's left goes to the center of the bullseye that says, or even the outer rings of the bullseye. When someone talks about athletics, when someone talks about band, etc., these are things that make this school system unique, and taking those away are going to impact thousands of people. And so it's important for people to understand exactly what issues are on the table, what the impact is of the limitations of funding that we have, and what choices are out there, and to make their concerns heard. The administration probably doesn't appreciate 10,000 phone calls from people on different topics, but I've always advocated people to express the way they feel. Each PTO has a Board of Ed liaison attached to it, and so whether people come to PTO meetings or not, people should understand that there's a liaison or someone on the Board of Education to talk to voice their concerns, to tell us what's important to them. I personally represent King Street and now for this year South Street, but there are representatives for every school that could be reached through the listing that citywide PTO, I hope, has, because that recently changed. But if you even have trouble reaching your representative, I've made the commitment to just reach out to any school that'll have me talk to give an understanding of what the process is. So for the people who aren't here tonight, I will make myself available for local PTOs to kind of sit and go through. Just keep that in mind, just keep people informed, and we'll try and do the same from a central level. But everything here, it happens locally. So I try and get out and have people understand what the calendar is. Most people can't attend meetings during the week, but even so, all the city council meetings are on Channel 24 on the first Tuesday of the month. So especially in March and in April for sure. And then, all of the board's phone numbers and addresses are on the website. So if there is a topic that you're concerned about or programs that you'd like to see maintained, feel free to drop us a line. And I think that's a good segue to questions. But thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone showing up this evening. Thank you.
Before you jump to questions, just one thing is, you need to challenge your board members of your PTOs to talk to the principals of your schools, to work with the fundraising money and the money that you work with to help them raise on how you can, as a PTO, help with the budget gaps. What can the PTOs step up and pay for? And it could be simple things. It could be supporting Kleenex. It could be supporting pencils. It could be supporting Purell. But the PTO, it's a job of a PTO to work with the principals of the school and help those schools and do what they need to help their schools improve and to help cover it. And without the parents challenging your PTO presidents to do this, it doesn't necessarily get done. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Go to your PTO meetings, talk to your PTO presidents and your PTO reps. And we have a citywide PTO meeting, first Monday of every month. Everybody's always welcome. You can come to those meetings. And we always just usually put a head number there, Dr. Glass are always there, and they share a lot of information. If you're not getting that information from your PTOs, you need to ask them why and challenge them. And that's what I ask you to do. And now if you want to take questions.
I want to take questions, but thanks to the Citywide PTO for sponsoring this evening. And we appreciate them organizing this, and I appreciate the administration for putting together the presentation, for coming out this evening. Thanks a lot.
Hello. I just have two comments, actually. First is Dr. Glass, I believe you mentioned something about doing your due diligence, and I agree. No one's happy. Everyone has lost jobs, no money, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if this were a business, you would get rated very high in terms of process improvements and Six Sigma. So I think kudos to you on that. Having said that, nobody's happy. And with regard to the buses, is it true about extending the school day as an alternative to getting buses? Because you had mentioned that would be an alternative to extend the school day rather than...
Well, let me explain what that means. Right now, we start at the high school at 7:10. And then we go to the middle schools around 7:40. And then we start the early elementary and late elementary by 9. What may happen is we'll keep the high school would like to start a little later. Let me tell you why it makes sense. Right now they start at 7:10. You know how teenagers are at 7:10, right? But if they have to go to some schools have what they call 0-hour programs, where kids that have conflict during the day, they can't do anything because they either work after school or they have some co-curricular. They have an early morning program. We can't have an early morning program. They'd be at 5 o'clock, so it doesn't work. So if they could start later, it would be helpful. But when I look at it, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So right now, it looks like the last elementary that gets out at 3:30, we get out at 3:40.
Well, I was going to support that idea because you would have to make capital expenditures. You'd have to do your maintenance on the equipment. You'd have extra fuel costs, salaries for the bus drivers. So that's, I think, a viable option, in my opinion.
Yeah, we think so, but the pro schools have to go along with this in the private because we can't manage. And I think they will, but it's also a safety issue for us, orienting equipment.
I also have a comment on the bus with the parochial school. We're actually a split house. My kids go to King Street and St. Joe's. Right now you have St. Joe's on the bus for over an hour and 10 minutes. So when you're doing this, could you please be considerate of those children also? That's a long time to get in the bus when you're in kindergarten with 8th graders.
Yeah, you're right. The law allows you an hour, and we don't want to be there if we can't be there. But here's what happened. You're here, and I might as well tell you. You have kids that are coming from exit 1 that are coming down to this place because they elected through a choice program to go there, or they live in that area to go to a parochial school down here, and whoever invented the system here in Danbury should copyright it. We have a 4-tiered system. These buses drop off, come back, drop off. They don't just go as we went to school. They take you there, and then they go pick up. They pick up 4 times. And what's happening to us, they're going across town, and they're getting caught in traffic, and they're on there over an hour. and that is a problem. And we try to refine that, but it seems to be the standard is going the wrong way. It's going up, unless we add equipment or time. So we'll be mindful of that. That is a problem. You're right. You're right. I apologize for that. It is a problem. Any other questions that we can answer? Yes.
Have we ever considered solar panels? I know when you put Ellsworth on, there was no,
We just so happened to get one of the cost avoidance that we've been working on for 2.5 years. The city council had a subcommittee and just approved it for us. We're going to be putting on solar panels and new light fixtures that could save us how much? What's the savings? Just so we have that number.
Shortly, we'll introduce solar panels at 2 of our facilities and electrical light upgrades at the secondary school, both middle schools and at the high school.
Put that up, I can't hear you.
So solar at 2 of our facilities, elementary schools, and light upgrades at the 3 secondary schools, the 2 middle schools, and at the high school level. In total, we could end up saving well in excess of $1 million over the long run in energy cost avoidance. It is net positive starting with year 1. In other words, the projected savings on our utilities will more than pay for the cost of the debt that we will be required to take out. Additionally, we'd like to announce and to share that both projects are funded, partially funded through CCEF, Connecticut Energy Fund, as well through CLMP. One fund alone will match approximately 50 cents on a dollar. So on the solar piece, per dollar cost will cost the Danbury taxpayers in the long run 50 cents. Again, we plan to pay for our share at 50 cents with the savings on the utility end. And in the lighting upgrades, we have a grant that will account for approximately 35 cents on every dollar of cost.
So we're trying some of that.
Just to add, there are solar panels going on a couple of facilities, but if you go back 2 or 3 years, it had been looked at across the district, so depending on the age of the buildings, the status of the roof, the lighting conditions, or where it's hilly and where it isn't. So they did look at all the buildings before they decided on Park Avenue and Ellsworth for the solar panels. So they did look everywhere that they could for it.
Any other questions?
In the back, I think.
Yeah. Usually I wouldn't talk, but now since I haven't came to the school system, I'm all concerned about this. As somebody who's been following the budget and the education process, especially on the state level, I didn't hear enough about ECS funding. I know I talked about it a few times before. The big problem I think you're going to have right now is that you don't know how much money you're going to get back getting from the state in terms of ECS funding. Governor Malloy during the campaign said that he was going to try his best to make sure that all municipalities are going to get their proper funding. But now that he's governor, he's changed his tune somewhat. And seeing that you have received 17% ECS funding in the past, there's a very good likelihood you might get 16 or 15% in ECS funding. Could you just explain to everybody the impact that's going to have on your budget? Because right now you're showing a 4% increase, but according to the latest News Times article on this situation, Mayor Bowden is pretty much not on board with a 4% increase. In fact, last year you got a 1.79 increase, which is, roughly half. If you get less ECS funding, isn't that going to have a drastic impact on this budget on the local level?
Yes. As I said, if it doesn't come, it's at 4, it's 7%. We're not going anywhere at 7%. And we're in a crisis. I mean, it's going to be large. We personally had some time with the governor, one-on-one, with a few of us from the large cities. We went up there, we made an appointment. He spent about an hour and a half with us. He understands the city makeup because he worked at Stanford. He is mindful of trying to he knows what that means. My guess, we'll get some of that. My understanding, they're putting together some era money. For example, you saw that jobs money that we didn't spend at all. I think what they're going to do is make us apply that to it and then give the difference. But I think he is trying. So before I jump off the bridge here, I'm going to wait to see what he says. And hopefully, and Mark, the mayor, said he would work with us. That's the best I can say. If we don't get the money, ultimately, you know, those concentric circles you saw, we're going to have to make major cuts. But I've got some confidence that hopefully we'll have most of that. But I don't know how much.
And just to follow up on that point, the ECS money is just one of the unknowns that we have. You know, based on the timing, the city charter dictates that we have to approve the budget and send it to the mayor. You know, ECS is an unknown. Even health insurance, which is the biggest driver of an increase that we're seeing today, is an estimate. And that's an estimate that's going to be worked through February, March, April, etc. And by that time, we're hoping to have a much more positive result. So there are multiple significant unknowns, you know, which we will know by the time the mayor and the council have the budget, you know, such as tax receipts from the city side, the ECS funding, or what the governor is proposing. I think it's on the 16th of February. He proposes his budget. Any progress we're going to have on utilities or health insurance, etc. We'll know more about that as well. So a lot of the unknowns will be clear between now and when we'll have final resolution of the budget.
How about the little guys? Any students have a question? I'd sit here bored the whole night. No one? I know that. I didn't say anything.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Not a question, but a statement. Yeah. It's not a question so much as a statement. And maybe it's inappropriate today, but out of a school of 10,000 students to have a representation of maybe 20 parents, I think is very disconcerting. I think there should have been more participation here by the parents. I don't know why there wasn't more of an attendance. I know the citywide PTO, which I attend, have been asked specifically by the PTOs to present the budget process, to give more information on it. I, as chair of the communication, have been working very, very hard this year to get information out to the public as to what we're doing. Well, maybe it's gotten out before through the news times, etc., and everybody knows about it. But I certainly think when you have swings between a budget where you can have an increase of $4 million to $7 million, and maybe give you $2 million if there has to be cuts, and to understand those circles, like Dr. Glass and Dr. Pasquarella had mentioned, is very critical. So, to me, I don't know why there was a lack of interest, and I'm very disappointed to
Speaking
see
to that
it. Thank
point,
you.
I agree with you. I don't know that it's lack of interest, but using myself as an example, it was ignorance. I found out about this by accident. The News Times rarely gives even 24 notice of any kind of this type of meeting. So maybe we could work with the PTOs to give handouts.
Actually, Eileen was promoting us a great deal in the News Time
And
at this meeting.
And the citywide PTOs, which is...
Well, I saw 2 articles in the past two days, I think, since last week and all. That was the only place. So, I mean, I don't know if there's email lists or something like that. I'd be happy to work on that with somebody.
The only thing is, the citywide PTOs had been advocating to their PTO members to get the word out to parents. That fell down. Yeah, there's just so much you could do, you know. But we tried the structure. Everybody was enthusiastic at the citywide PTO meetings and the publications, the papers and the facts that I believe put notices in there. So as I said, it might have been an inappropriate comment, but I, tell it as it is, and I think it's just very disconcerting.
If you didn't hear from your PTO about this meeting, you need to call your PTO president, and you need to talk to them, because they were supposed to share it. Rob?
Yeah, actually, I want to comment on that comment. I think it was an appropriate statement, and I'm glad you said it. We've been to a bunch of meetings, and we've seen actually a far greater turnout than we see here tonight at some other meetings. I think a lot of comments we got, Tracy and I got, and emails and stuff like that, is people just feel, that there's nothing to be done. And we try to explain to them, and we sent it out actually just anticipates what they're doing, because they feel that, from us to be complained. And we get a lot of...
And I appreciate those comments. I think it goes back to what I said earlier. It may be inevitable that we end up cutting something out, but it's important for us to hear what the will of the community is in terms of what we should prioritize. Dr. South said before, based on public feedback, a lot of the board's guidance to the administration is keep teachers in the classroom at any cost. And if you stop in the last year, 2 or 3, there's always choices to be made in what has to get done. And so it's very important to hear, absent a voice of the community, the board will heavily rely on, not that we don't trust you for anything, but it is important when you have maybe equal alternatives, what is the preference of the community? What impacts the greatest or least number of students? I mean, the choices that we made over the past 3 years, I've got 4 students myself in the system, and every one of them has been impacted by what we've done over the last 2 or 3 years, whether it's the gifted program, whether it's larger class sizes at the elementary level, fewer electives to choose from at middle school, etc. That's only going to multiply. So everyone here really has a stake in the outcome, and the community has a stake in the outcome. What is it that we would like to prioritize, given a choice? So inevitably, will there be more cuts made? I can't see how that won't happen. But the magnitude of what is decided upon, I think public input is critical, that's why I'm extremely appreciative for everyone to be here, and that we'll do whatever we can to reach out at the local level to get the word out.
Now, I know most of you care, and the next thing that we're working on, our enrollment's going up, and we're looking at how we're going to handle the space issues. There's going to be a special workshop with the board to go over the findings of the demographer and some of the ideas that we have for maybe some little redistricting and then maybe opening up some other function for the middle school. The middle schools are getting to be 1150 at 1200. If you want a bad day, go spend the day here. They're great kids, but boy, do they have energy. You get too many of them in this building, it gets kind of tough. So we're going to have a meeting, and we'll have it posted, and it'll be a workshop just to deal with our enrollment. You might want to make an effort to come out to that and listen, because your ideas are really important to us.
I just want to add one more thing as we're closing. You've met 3 members of our 5-member cabinet, Elio, Sal, and myself. Joyce Emerson over here. Joyce is the Director of Special Services. What does that mean? It means everything. Special education, school psychology, school social work, our alternative programs, etc. And Kim Thompson, who is not here tonight because she has little ones at home and she had a challenge that she had to take care of, is our HR Director and also an attorney. And we use that model as a cost savings. The reason I'm mentioning the cabinet is because all 5 of us have children of our own. This is a picture of our own kids, not the cabinet kids. This is from a group of our elementary school children. I keep this as the wallpaper on my desktop, and every time we have a really tough decision to make, I open this up and I look at this group of kids. In my office, I have 200 faces of a photo montage that was given to me as a present from kids from kindergarten through 12th grade. From kindergarten through 12th grade. We have these tough decisions to make again, as Irving said. It's either we go left or right, but they're both bad decisions. We look at the kids, and that helps us. So the reason I'm sharing this, I want you to understand we're parents ourselves. We went into this career to help build programs for children. So it's personally devastating for us. We have to make these really gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching decisions. So you're not dealing with a bunch of bureaucrats who just really don't give a darn. We're dealing with a group of parents, a group of people just like yourselves, who are struggling with the same kind of concerns. As Irving said, he has 4 kids in our district. And so we have the president of the chair of the Board of Education, who now has to help facilitate the vote on what to cut, and knowing that he's also voting to cut services to his own kids. So we really appreciate you being here. And lastly, it was from me, Alfonso, thank you. Eileen, thank you.
Thank Ben for
thank you. I'm sorry.
And the council.
Too. Alfonso, Eileen, and John, and also Lisa, who comes periodically, represent the media that cover all of our programs. And although we have a rather sparse showing tonight, it will be through the local media outlets, and we appreciate you being here. Also, I want to reiterate that this is not us against City Hall. Irving said don't storm the Bastille and beat down the mayor's office. You have to give these guys more money and stuff. Ben is from the City Council. I think he has come to every single session that we've had. Joe Cavo has come, and many other council members. So we're united in this. We're all trying to make the best of a very difficult situation.
Just one last thing in terms of what you could do. The legislative session, we talked about ECS before. It's critical that you make your voice heard to our state legislators. One of the reasons we're in the position we're in relative to state funding, we need a strong voice from our state legislative delegation in terms of keeping that ECS funding at least whole. And that's probably the best we can hope for. But without a lot of constituents calling our state legislators. They really need our support in terms of advocating for that. And that helps the Danbury taxpayer as well, because like we went through before, the Danbury taxpayer can ill afford increases, whether it's the school budget or elsewhere. So I urge you all to look up your state legislators and have problems with that. Just let me know. But once again, I'd like to thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you.
And the citywide PTO leadership, thank you guys.
And if I can